Every 21 years for 18 days, it kills. Wait, no, that's Dr. Richard Malcolm from The Night Strangler. Every 27 years, it awakens to feed. No, that's Pennywise from Stephen King's It. Every 30 years, it searches for human livers. Damn it, that's Tooms from The X-Files. Okay, I think I've got it now. Every 23rd spring for 23 days, it gets to eat. In 2001, Jeepers Creepers introduced audiences to a monster that appeared destined to become horror's next great icon. The creeper had a memorable design, a mysterious mythology, a simple but effective gimmick, and thanks to a catchy old song, his own unofficial theme music. This should have been the beginning of a massive horror franchise. Instead, questionable creative decisions, increasingly cheap sequels, enormous gaps between movies, and the increasingly unavoidable crimes of the man behind them prevented Jeepers Creepers from ever reaching the heights it should have. By the end of the 1990s, audiences had been bombarded by the post-Scream slasher craze. Movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend, along with revived franchises like Halloween H2O, had filled theaters with attractive 20-somethings being stalked by killers in increasingly marketable Halloween masks. The formula had worked, but by the turn of the new millennium, the novelty was beginning to wear thin. Audiences weren't necessarily finished with horror, they were just becoming less interested in seeing the same polished teenage slasher repackaged again and again. Then in 1999, the Blair Witch Project took the world by storm with its viral marketing campaign. While The Sixth Sense became the movie you desperately tried to see before some big loudmouth ruined the ending.
What an ending!
Wow, I can't believe he was dead the whole time.
Thank you, Mr. Blow the Picture for me.
It was after seeing those two films that writer and director Victor Salva began working on Jeepers Creepers, his attempt to bring back the movie monsters of old. Salva grew up before the Michaels, Freddys, and Jasons would saturate the slasher movie-going experience of the 1980s. Instead, it was the classic monster movies shown on Creature Features, a television program hosted by Bob Wilkins, that inspired Salva to become a filmmaker. Movies like Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, and my personal favorite, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, would be direct inspiration for his new movie, Jeepers Creepers. Unlike the slasher craze of the 80s and the watered-down teen slasher craze of the 90s, Jeepers Creepers would instead be a gothic horror movie, relying more on shadows and sounds over outright gore and violence. There would still be moments of violence and gore. I mean, this was an R-rated horror movie released in 2001 after all, but Salva wanted the atmosphere and tension to do most of the work. Think the ending of Halloween when Michael was shown to disappear after being shot. It was just the fact that he was still out there, anywhere, that made it so scary. Salva wrote the script quickly, reportedly completing it in roughly a month. Once it was sent around, interest came almost immediately, with 2 studios and an independent producer expressing interest within a day. Salva's manager then suggested that it might be a good idea to show the script to Francis Ford Coppola. Yes, the same Francis Ford Coppola of Dementia 13 fame. I guess he also made some other lesser-known movies like the Godfather trilogy, Apocalypse Now, and Bram Stoker's Dracula, but I think we all know him for Dementia 13. Salva had initially been reluctant to show Coppola the script, believing it might be a little too commercial for him. Instead, Coppola loved it and wanted Jeepers Creepers to become the first movie in American Zoetrope's new slate for MGM and United Artists. Coppola had helped finance Salva's first feature, Clown House, a movie which featured the screen debut of Sam Rockwell, and a movie in which absolutely nothing horrific happened behind the scenes. Only a couple days after handing his script to Coppola, the offers started coming in. Eventually, the script would get picked up by United Artists and MGM, with some German companies and Coppola's American Zoetrope financing the rest. When it came time for casting, the production was pressured to cast bigger names, but Salva wanted fresh faces who wouldn't arrive with any audience expectations. Coppola ultimately backed him, allowing Salva to cast the actors he thought were right for the movie. For Trish, the more guarded and older sister, Salva would cast 30-year-old Gina Phillips. Phillips had done some small TV and movie work, like 10 episodes of Ally McBeal and a made-for-TV movie called Deadly Invasion: The Killer Bee Nightmare. Yes, clearly a shotgun is the best way to deal with killer bees. Meanwhile, Justin Long, who was 8 years her junior, would be cast as her younger and more boisterous brother, Derry. Long had barely even cracked into the industry, appearing in a small supporting role in the cult classic Star Trek spoof, Galaxy Quest, which is f***ing awesome, by the way. Though he would go on to have something of a weird relationship with horror movies, but don't worry, I don't think he gets turned into a walrus in this one. As for the titular Creeper in Jeepers Creepers, the role was originally envisioned for Lance Henriksen. Henriksen and Salva had already worked with each other on movies like Nature of the Beast and the Disney-produced movie Powder, and I really want to emphasize that Disney made a movie with Victor Salva. Lance, however, would end up turning down the role for whatever reason, so instead they would settle on Jonathan Breck, a man who had trained extensively in theater and musical stage productions. However, when he came into the audition, he brought the exact kind of intensity they were looking for. He even shaved his head because he felt the Creeper wouldn't have any hair. Filming for the movie would begin in August 2000 and finish in October, with Victor Salva calling the whole experience grueling due to the excessive summer heat. Now, when the trailer dropped in early to mid 2001, I was hooked pretty much immediately. Looking back though, it is very 2000s in its editing, and the trailer makes it look more like the teen slasher movies that came before it, though it does sort of ruin the surprise that the Creeper is a monster. But a creepy premise and some early 2000s nu metal was really all it needed to get my attention. And with all that out of the way, I guess we should just jump into the movie. Jeepers Creepers follows brother and sister Derry and Trish, and right away one of the things that helps the movie is that our leads are siblings instead of just another pair of potential love interests. The dynamic duo are on their way back home from college, but not before having a little fun with some license plates.
No, gay forever! Gay forever!
That's a 6, not a G, you idiot. That's sexy forever.
Actually, it should be sex-a forever. You gotta put a little funk on it. Their fun little game is interrupted by a complete psychopath who doesn't seem to know the first thing about passing someone on a lonely country road. The encounter does remind Trish of an old story about a high school prom king and queen who disappeared on this same road 23 years earlier. Well, mostly disappeared. They found the car and her body, but no head though. Derry figures this is the perfect time to play the license plate game using the crazed driver's license plate. And I would genuinely love to know how many people tried to get beating you as a custom plate after this movie came out.
Butt picker.
Repeat, ass and butt, you lose.
These two really do have the weirdest games. I actually like that they have these little games they play with one another. It just grounds them and makes them feel more like a real brother and sister. I mean, it's not exactly how me and my sister treat each other. We then get the best scene in not just this movie, but the entire Jeepers Creepers franchise. As Derry and Trish continue driving, they find Beating You and watch in horror as he dumps what appears to be a body down a large drain pipe. The scariest part for me anyways is the fact he watches them as they drive by. It sort of reminds me of the scene from Halloween where Tommy Doyle watches as Michael carries Annie's dead body in the house. Now, there is a little controversy surrounding the possible inspiration for this scene. According to Salva, the idea came from a story he heard about an elderly couple who witnessed someone dumping a body and then decided to return and investigate. What makes that explanation interesting is that there was a real case involving a man named Dennis Depew who murdered his wife and was spotted by an older couple while apparently disposing of her body behind an abandoned schoolhouse. Once Depew realized they had seen him, he chased them down the road. The case was later recreated during a season 3 episode of Unsolved Mysteries, and when you watch that sequence, the similarities to Jeepers Creepers are incredibly specific. The isolated road, the license plate game, the suspicious figure behind an abandoned building, and the vehicle chasing the witnesses afterward, it's all there. Maybe Salva genuinely heard the story somewhere else, but considering the popularity of unsolved mysteries at the time, I find it difficult to believe that the episode had absolutely no influence on this scene. Either way, it is seriously creepy, and ultimately the moment that kept me hooked for the rest of the movie. So Beating You chases after them again, until eventually driving them off the road. He could have just as easily continued following them, but I think he likes to play with his food. Derry somehow convinces his sister to go back and see what exactly was dumped down there, but I like how she calls out how stupid the idea is.
You know the part in scary movies where somebody does something really stupid and everybody hates them for it? This is it.
Derry makes the very smart decision of climbing into the pipe, and of course ends up falling down once he's spooked by some rats. Though I do have to ask, where are the bodies the creeper dumped? Derry wakes up in what is called the House of Pain, which sounds more like an 80s hip-hop album than a place you'd store dead bodies. Except said dead bodies aren't entirely dead, some are still very much alive, for a little while anyways. Derry continues searching and it looks like Beating You is an avid carpenter and maybe a chemist? Now I can't exactly show you what Derry discovers next, but just pretend the walls are covered in these naked Ken and Barbie dolls, except sewn together like some twisted quilt. This place would be very popular with Ed Gein. Derry finds some stairs, so at least he's not stuck down there, but in a terrifying turn of events, discovers the high school couple Trish spoke about earlier. So I guess it wasn't an urban legend after all. Unfortunately, I think the special effects artist only had like $20 to work with that day because these bodies look more like porcelain dolls than real people. I guess we could chalk it up to them being preserved for 23 years, but even when I first saw this on VHS back in the day, I thought the effects weren't super convincing. I mean, the guy has an expression of a blow-up doll. Meanwhile, Trish better watch out because it looks like a jump scare is creeping up behind her. I don't think Derry's gonna be okay. Trish takes over driving because Derry, well, he's seen some shit. The siblings pull into a diner/gas station, but if it isn't Mr. Fancy Pants. At this point, I'd be filling the tank up and getting as far away from this area as possible. Trish and Derry go to call the cops, but instead get a call of their own. Some random lady who seems to know a lot about them, cats, and whatever the hell is on their trail.
You hear that song, you run. And I mean run.
There's something inherently creepy about old songs from the early 1900s. It is nice to see that the creeper, because I'm tired of calling him Beating You, has his own theme song though. Some police arrive after what seems like a few hours, but why did Derry wait so long to change his shirt? Derry attempts to explain what he found, but I don't exactly blame the police for not believing that he found preserved bodies from kids that went missing 23 years ago. Hey, when did this become a Sam Raimi film? The creeper seems to have a thing for dirty laundry, as some of the folks at the diner witnessed him furiously smelling Derry's. I mean, you do you, Mr. Creeper, but dirty boxer shorts generally aren't my thing. They managed to find some fingerprints and oh my god, the creeper is Ashy Larry. I do love how creepy this moment is though, with the music completely cutting out and Trish acting like she just heard something. While the police escort Trish and Derry, they get a report that the church is up in flames. Clearly it's not the creeper trying to cover his tracks.
That's the song. That's the song.
No, that's not the song. The lady on the phone played Jeepers Creepers by Paul Whiteman. The song here is actually a cover of Peekaboo by Susie and the Banshees by the band Echo 3. I mean, come on, Derry, get your shit together. Oh my god, is that Teen Wolf? Teen Wolf isn't usually known for decapitations. So I think at this point in the movie, it should be pretty damn clear that whatever the creeper is, it's obviously not human. Trish goes to check on the police, only to find one of their heads in the middle of the road. You would say, oh, they should probably get their asses out of there, but it's sort of like a car crash where you just can't take your eyes away. I also love the cheeky barbecue billboard in the background while the creeper eats the cop's tongue. Also, at some point, dude, you really gotta let go of that hair. As creepy as the movie has been so far, I do appreciate the little touches of dark humor thrown in. I really hope they don't overdo it in the sequels. Trish and Derry stop at a very creepy old house because they need to find a phone. I guess you don't have very many options when you're in the kind of position they are. Oh, I don't like that creepy scarecrow. I don't know what it is with scarecrows, but they can be so damn scary. Hey, is that Mrs. Peacock? Please don't tell me this movie has 3 different endings too. Trish and Derry ask if they can use her phone, but she sounds like she's 2 sheets to the wind.
Hell, I'll have as many cats as I want to have.
I love when Trish brings up someone died. The old lady is so concerned because she thinks it's one of her cats, but as soon as Trish reveals it was some police, she's like, oh, who cares? The power suddenly goes out, and I'm sure that can only mean good things are about to happen. I don't remember the scarecrow being that terrifying. Actually, that's one of the things I love about the design of our tongue-eating friend here. He works so perfectly as this silhouette, this figure, that just makes him even more imposing. Director Victor Salva considers this to be the second form of his monster, what he refers to as the Scarecrow from the Dead. The first form he calls the automotive form, which consciously or subconsciously was inspired by the Steven Spielberg made-for-TV movie Duel. There is a third form of the monster, but we'll get to that.
Get the hell away from me!
The old woman, who has the survival instincts of a lemming, decides to run inside her house because whatever this thing is, it's with her cats. Things go about how you'd think, though our friend seems to be operating the old woman like a hand puppet. We also finally get a good look at his face, and he is definitely not human. He's also very agile for a monster that likes to eat tongues and knit. Derry and Trish attempt to run it over multiple times, but for some reason it sort of just lets them. I guess Trish tricked it, but seeing how quickly it moved when the old woman tried to shoot it, it had plenty of time to get out of the way. Trish is like the ultimate final girl though, because she's not content with just running it over once. No, she does it over and over. Well, that's an interesting development. It can fly. Sort of explains what Trish heard back at the gas station. The siblings make their way to the police station, and while Trish speaks to her mother on the phone, Derry notices there are a lot of missing people. My favorite one though is Tim Sullivan here, with aliases like Dom Dom DeLuise, Vito Volpicella, Big Dom Scoliosis, Hans von Joypipe, and Thrifty Sam the Salsa Man. You know, Tim, maybe you should just stick to directing Z-grade horror movies. Suddenly, Giselle, the woman from the phone, comes in. Apparently, she's a psychic and has come to warn Trish and Derry about the Creeper. The Creeper apparently uses its truck to scare the bejesus out of people so it can smell their fear and decide if they have anything it wants to eat. Apparently, it really likes something on Trish or Derry, and it will stop at nothing to get it. She also says Trish hurt this thing as much as it can be hurt, and it basically regenerates itself by eating the specific body part from its prey. However, if say you threw it into a wood chipper or chopped it up with an axe, how could it regenerate then? Regardless, the Creeper hobbles its way inside the police station and decides to feast on some of the prisoners. Giselle continues to freak out our heroes, telling them one of them is going to die if they stay at the station. Even with the cops, I'd still probably get my ass out of there and just let the police handle it. Wait a second, how can Jonathan Breck be a police officer and the Creeper at the same time? Well, that ruins my suspension of disbelief. The police start getting offed one by one. I mean, this poor guy gets his heart ripped straight out. Derry questions Giselle over who dies, and I mean, she should know. She is a psychic after all. Oh no, not Trish. The Creeper suddenly turns into Spider-Man, beating Sam Raimi's movie by 1 whole year. Trish and Derry find themselves in a room with absolutely no way out, which is perfect for a hungry gargoyle demon monster, or the third and final form of the Creeper, which Salva always referred to as his Harryhausen beast form. He seems to have a hard time deciding what he wants, which I totally relate to. Anytime I get fast food, I just stand there looking like a jackass while I decide what I want. The Creeper decides that Derry's the one he wants, but damn did the police take their sweet ass time getting there. Well, that's new. Trish tries to bargain with the monster, and what's interesting is he actually sort of contemplates it for a minute. I mean, look, if I had a choice between Justin Long and Gina Phillips, I'm taking Gina. In a pretty shocking turn of events, the monster actually flies off with one of the main characters. I remember seeing this and being like, there's no f***ing way they just did that. We then jump to an abandoned meatpacking factory where we hear the screams in the dark, just as Giselle said. I'm just gonna say Derry did not have a good time. Also, fun fact, this is the only time anyone other than Jonathan Breck has played the Creeper, as Justin Long would don the outfit, so it was his eyes seen through his skull, which is kind of morbid to think about. Okay, so maybe it's not the only time there was another Creeper, but does it even count? Something I noticed that I never really picked up on back in the day, and maybe it's a reach, but earlier in the movie we see Trish holding a pair of glasses. Now, whether these are prescription or just reading glasses, I don't know. Also, there's the scene where Trish sees the truck coming in the distance, but it turns out to be a guy carrying bales of hay. So is this an intentional hint that Derry will ultimately be taken for his eyes? I mean, we see the Creeper's eyes a few times and they're white, almost like he's got cataracts. If this was intended, then I can say it's very subtle and really well done. Also, I've always wondered how the Creeper got his custom license plate. I can't imagine him standing in line at the DMV. I think it's possible he either just made it himself, or maybe he took it off a victim. And as far as the driving goes, I think most people theorize that he absorbs some of the skills or knowledge from the people he eats, which would also explain how he knows to sew. Going back to this movie after having not watched it for many years, it was surprising how much I enjoyed it. I remembered really liking the first third of the movie, as I always felt once he was fully revealed, the Creeper sort of lost some of its mystique, but rewatching it, I think it's a lot better than I've given it credit. The monster looks cool, especially when he's in his spooky scarecrow phase, though some of the effects are not the best, and at 85 minutes it never really stops moving. The film would go on to be a pretty big hit, bringing in nearly $60 million on a $10 million budget. It even broke the record for highest Labor Day opening at the time, beating The Crow City of Angels. I myself never did see it in theaters, but I bought the VHS the moment it came out. Now, the critics weren't exactly kind to the movie, but let's be honest here, the critics don't matter, they have never mattered, and they will never matter. When it comes to horror, it's the fans that matter, and horror fans ate this movie up.
Just hook it to my veins!
And because of that, a sequel was as inevitable as the Creeper returning every 23rd spring. Of course, the studio wasn't about to wait 23 years. Jeepers Creepers 2 would release 2 years later on August 29th, 2003. Due to the success of the original, the sequel would see its budget climb from $10 million to $17 million, which might not seem like much, but you've got to remember, these are just small horror films. But still, with a budget increase of 70%, clearly that must mean the movie is 70% better.
No.
Salva apparently never intended for there to be a sequel. Being the sneaky little guy that he is, he had deliberately created the Creeper's 23-year cycle as a way of avoiding the endless cash grab cycle that so many other horror franchises eventually fell into. Unfortunately for him, executive producer Francis Ford Coppola pointed out one fairly obvious hole in that plan: just set the sequel during the same 23 days. Honestly, it sort of feels like Salva didn't exactly want to do a sequel, but when Coppola pointed out the hole in his plan, it suddenly dawned on Salva that there was no way of backing out. He was the Jeepers Creepers guy now,
Whether he wants to or not.
Originally, the film would see the return of Gina Phillips as Trish Jenner. She and psychic Giselle were going to team up to hunt the Creeper, with the bus full of kids being the small secondary story. But things sort of changed when Salva realized that the broken down bus full of teens was the real story he wanted to write, and the entire Trish portion of the movie would be dropped completely. And just to clear some things up, but for years there was a rumor stating that Gina Phillips declined an opportunity to return when that simply wasn't true. According to Gina herself, The studio didn't think it was scary enough, so Victor rewrote Jeepers Creepers 2, making it have nothing to do with me. I didn't turn it down. I'm glad you asked this because it's something I've always wanted to clear up. Every time I see that written, I think, no, I didn't turn it down. In place of the Trish and Giselle storyline, Salva introduced Jack Taggart Sr., played by Ray Weiss, and his son Jack Jr., played by Luke Edwards. The two would form the movie's secondary story, hunting the creeper after it takes their son and brother. Salva has even compared this part of the story as being a take on Moby Dick, with Wise's character being a stand-in for Captain Ahab, and Edwards being a stand-in for Queequeg. But unfortunately, not this Queequeg. Essentially, Salva was trying to do for Jeepers Creepers what Aliens had done for Alien. He wanted the movie to be bigger, faster, more intense, and the trailers definitely made it appear that way. When the trailer dropped early 2003, again I was hooked. Not just because it looked way more epic than the first, but also because of the use of Meet the Creeper by Rob Zombie. I was definitely still in my Rob Zombie phase, so hearing one of his songs against what looked like all hell breaking loose was all I needed to give them my $5, or whatever the hell movie tickets cost back then. So, did Jeepers Creepers 2 actually turn out to be 70% better? The film opens 3 days after the events of the first, on the 22nd day of the Creeper cycle. The Taggarts are working on the farm, setting up some scarecrows. The dog Mac, who is clearly the hero of the movie, notices that there's something weird about one of the scarecrows. That must be one of those new Spirit Halloween animatronic scarecrows. I really gotta get me one of those. I don't know what the issue is, Billy. It's just a terrifying scarecrow you put up, nothing to worry about. Would someone just listen to the dog? He seems to be the only one who knows. Also, this scarecrow could really use a pedicure. Unlike the first movie, which was done mostly at night with the creeper being very sneaky, he's now decided to just abduct children in broad daylight. I guess he realizes he only has a day left, so it's now or never if he wants to eat. This is kind of a shocking beginning, because I don't think most people expect the young boy to be killed off so quick. Meanwhile, Freddy Krueger is preparing to drive a bus full of teens into a chasm. Here we meet our cast of characters. Though characters might be generous, they're basically stereotypes with jerseys on. We've got the racist jerk, the black guys, the white girl, the black girl, the Latina girl, the possibly gay guy, and of course the homophobe. Seriously, beyond these surface level traits, none of them feel like real people. Jeepers Creepers 1 gave us a brother-sister duo that actually felt like they'd known each other their whole lives. Here, a bus full of mostly forgettable jocks and cheerleaders who I had trouble telling apart for most of the movie, but hey, they're all about to have a really shitty night. Well, there's nothing worse than a blown out tire, although this homemade shuriken with a tooth in it is kind of distressing. A report comes on over the radio talking about the Creeper's House of Pain, which he tried to burn down in the previous movie. The Creeper isn't exactly the best at covering his tracks. Back with Jack and Mac, who are on the track to find the Creeper's shack. They actually just find the Creeper's knife that he must have misplaced. It's fine though, he's got a whole drawer full of them. Well, that's interesting. Knives generally don't fly on their own. What's even more interesting though, is this never happens again. So what was the purpose? You know, this movie features a lot of shirtless teen boys. One of the stranger things about this movie is the constant homoerotic undertone. Not because there's anything wrong with that, but because the movie never fully commits to it. A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 had no problem putting its homoeroticism on full display, and honestly, it was far more entertaining because of it. So who completely drops their pants when they're peeing shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of other guys? According to the commentary, Jake does it specifically because he thinks Izzy might be gay, like he's tempting him as a joke. But I don't know, man, it's a little bizarre. And don't worry, because it gets even more bizarre. There was apparently an even worse version of this scene where one of the guys wanders off to, pleasure himself because the bus vibrations turned him on. That got cut out for obvious reasons, but the fact that that was even considered in the first place?
Right to jail, right away.
Don't worry about that shadow flying above Kimball, it's just the giant claw. Meanwhile, Mac is quick to work building his creeper killing machine. Alright, so maybe it's Jack Jr., but Mac is clearly supervising. Racist guy Scotty starts being racist because that's his one defining character trait. But while his Latina girlfriend tries to calm him down before the bus erupts into a race war, Minxie is having dreams about cornfields covered in ugly yellow filters. Oh hey, it's our buddy Derry. It's nice to see he's doing well. So Minxie suddenly has some kind of psychic ability she never had before and sees images of the creeper's victims and the creeper itself, who runs very silly. Well, that's another blown tire, but at least they make the wise decision of leaving the bus so the creeper can pick them off one by one. The bus driver finds another shuriken, but is that not Derry's rose tattoo? Man, the creeper really had it out for that guy. And out for the coach too, apparently. The kids are ordered back on the bus, thus giving us an excuse to kill off all the adults. This was an intentional move on Salva's part, because he felt it would be much scarier if the kids were forced to survive on their own. Additionally, the creeper was going to use some of the adults as sort of meat puppets to try and coax the kids out of the bus. I don't know why this idea was cut, because it sounds kind of awesome. Everyone starts yelling at Scotty, asking what he saw. But come on guys, Scotty doesn't know. Jack listens to the radio and discovers that the creeper is one county over, so I guess it's time to go creepin'. You know, sorta like Waylon. Luckily, the bus is full of javelins and even a flare gun. Clearly that should be enough to stop a monster that took gunfire from like, what, 10 cops? While everyone argues over whose skin color is what, and who might be gay, the creeper wastes absolutely no time in seeing which one of these kids he wants to eat. This scene, where director Victor Salva refers to the creeper as flirting with the kids, was nearly cut from the film because he felt like it might come off as a little too silly, and he's kind of right, because outside of one or two moments in the original film, he wasn't very comedic. It almost feels like he's becoming a little Freddy Krueger-ish. Minxie faints at the prospect of the creeper flirting and has another one of her unexplained psychic visions. This gives Justin Long a chance to explain a bit of the creeper's backstory, you know, needing to feed for 23 days. So now she has to explain this to the group, and at least Scotty thinks it's weird she's suddenly having visions. The Taggarts find a car that was attacked by the creeper, and it looks like he peeled the roof off like it was a can of sardines. The teens from the bus get in contact with the Taggarts and explain they have something of a creeper problem.
It's fucking happening! We're being fucking arrested!
You know, you kind of deserve it for celebrating so quick. One of the cheerleaders rams a javelin straight through the ceiling of the bus and right through the creeper's head. We need to get this girl out of cheerleading and straight into the javelin throw.
I have to go now. My planet needs me.
The creeper comes slamming back down into the bus, blowing out all the windows. Now, did he do this on purpose? Or was it because he's missing half his head and is maybe a little woozy? Well, it looks like it might be the latter. The creeper locks them inside the bus and offers them a supporting wing for comfort. Look, I understand the creeper needing a new head, but why did it remove this kid's shirt and jacket too? You know, there are some pretty good practical effects in this movie, but the creeper regrowing its head might be one of the best. Well, until we get the cheap CGI morph effect. The movie then turns into Lord of the Flies, with the group voting who should stay on the bus or who should be tossed off. Nearly everybody decides to get off the bus anyways, because we're in the third act and we need to start thinning out the crowd. The second they see the creeper though, they're begging to be let back in. Wasn't exactly the smartest plan, now was it, guys? Oh no, Scotty. He was the nicest guy. What's that, Mac? Timmy's in that damn well again? Minxie just happens to run into the Taggarts, but at this point, she's basically given up. Some of the surviving kids wind up back on the bus, but if only Glasses Guy learned his lesson from the last time. I mean, how many times is the creeper going to grab him through the roof? He's saved by the goodest boy, Mac. I mean, just look at him. He wants to tear that damn creeper's head off. One thing I find interesting with the creeper in this movie when compared to the first is how much darker and wetter his look is. If you remember in the first one, when the creeper was rummaging through Trish's car, he left fingerprints that blew away in the breeze. But it seems the more he eats, the more it reconstitutes into its original form. In the behind the scenes of Jeepers Creepers 2, they even talk about how originally the creeper was supposed to be almost completely black, but they weren't exactly sure how that would look on film, so they made him look more like an ashy gray, something you'd expect from, like, say, a gargoyle. With this movie though, like the beginning in the cornfield, they made him much darker to hide his features in the sunlight, and give him a more shadowy sort of look. It's also nice to see he has Derry's eyes, though they are a completely different color from when Long played him. So they hit the creeper with their harpoon, but I'm not sure what the plan is after that. I mean, the creeper is fairly powerful and starts dragging the truck around everywhere. The creeper throws the harpoon back at the truck, but please tell me Mac is okay. Oh, thank God. Who knew the creeper could bounce like that? Well, screw those kids on the bus, I guess. The creeper then completely obliterates their truck, so I have no idea what they're gonna do now. Meanwhile, a few more of the survivors find an exterminator truck, but isn't that the same truck from Men in Black? Thankfully, the truck just happened to have keys in it, though it still can't seem to outrun the creeper. They can, however, trick the creeper, who isn't exactly working with a full deck, and at this point, not even a full body. Nose still works, I see. He's like a bloodhound, but slightly gooier. I do like his adorable little frog leaps, though. But at this point, I'm not even sure which character he's trying to attack. Wait a second, let's wind that one back. So roughly 15 minutes ago, the creeper completely obliterated Taggart's truck and harpoon, yet somehow he had enough time to flip the truck, mount the harpoon back on the truck, replace the tire, and drive over to save the day? I'm just going to assume it was Mac that did all this, because he's such a good boy. Jack does the very reasonable thing and stabs the hell out of the creeper. I mean, after what it did, can you blame him? The creeper then enters its hibernation, which I think would be a great time to put this thing through a wood chipper, no? 23 years later, and some kids pull up to the Taggart farm so they can get a good look at the creeper. What? $10? Damn, these photo op prices are getting out of hand. I like how even near the end, we still have to add another shirtless teen into the movie. Seems like old man Taggart is waiting for the creeper to wake back up from its slumber, but I swear to God, that better be the original Mac. Jeepers Creepers 2 would come out and earn a very healthy $63 million against a $17 million budget. And while it did make $4 million more than the original, it also cost $7 million more to make. However, did the higher budget lead to a better movie? No, not at all. Look, the movie is fine for what it is, but one of the issues I have with it is how we're stuck in one location for like 90% of the movie. In the first movie, it was sort of one long chase, with the creeper constantly on the trail of Derry and Trish. Here, it was like shooting fish in a barrel. The teens were sitting ducks the whole time and really had nowhere they could go or nothing they could do. One thing I really do miss is the truck. What happened to the truck? There's a very brief post-credit scene at the end of the first movie that shows the creeper driving it, but does that mean he went back to the police station to pick it up? And if the creeper still has it, then why didn't he use it? The biggest issue though are the characters. There's nothing really likable or memorable about any of them. I spent half the time looking at the screen like, who's that? I do like the Taggarts and kind of wish the movie had been built around them instead. At least they actually had something to do and had some kind of objective. They weren't just sitting there waiting to be killed off. I also sort of dislike how the creeper is less creepy this go around. He's very aggressive, which I could chalk up to him being desperate to find food in his final days of the cycle, but man, what kind of life is that? You only get to enjoy life for 23 days every 23 years, and the only goal you have is to stuff your face as much as you can? You know, now that I think about it, that actually doesn't sound too bad. The movie as a whole is fine. It's nowhere near as interesting as the original, but it still made enough money that producers knew there was still more juice left to be squeezed from the Creeper. Unfortunately, the franchise was about to enter a hibernation of its own. The Creeper sleeps for 23 years, Jeepers Creepers would sleep for 14, but somehow it felt even longer. After two fairly successful, low-budget horror movies, you'd think they'd be chomping at the bit to get out a third movie. Well, they were. The issue was MGM and United Artists were having a bit of a financial crisis. After a string of box office bombs and a failed bid to purchase Universal, MGM wasn't doing too hot. While they did want to get a Jeepers Creepers 3 going, things were so bad that they figured the next one would have to go direct to video. Anytime a franchise goes direct to video, it's basically a death knell for that IP. What's next? Jeepers Creepers in space? The title for their direct-to-video offering was going to be called Jeepers Creepers: The Creeper Walks Among Us, which is a fun play on the Universal horror movie The Creature Walks Among Us, the third in the Creature from the Black Lagoon series. It would feature an opening sequence setting the Creeper in the Old West, which actually sounds kind of awesome. Imagine the Creeper riding horseback while hunting cowboys and Indians. However, Salva objected to the idea. He felt the theatrical experience was a big reason why the first two films did so well on physical media to begin with. However, they simply didn't have the money to finance the movie Salva wanted to make. His new version, titled Jeepers Creepers Cathedral, was going to include the bit in the Old West, but then spring forward to the future, where Trish, Jack Taggart, and others were going to team up and kill the Creeper. He also had an idea about a television series with the working title Poho County, which would follow up directly after the third film, suggesting that the Creeper wouldn't die after all. The movie would continue to stall, and at one point, Salva publicly blamed MGM and their financial issues. It was noted that MGM didn't actually own the franchise. That belonged to Francis Ford Coppola's American Zoetrope, meaning they could technically make a third movie without MGM. The problem was that MGM held the domestic distribution rights, which made releasing it in the United States extremely difficult without their involvement. Years later, those rights were either bought out, transferred, or simply expired, although it's unclear exactly what happened. Myriad, who co-financed the second movie, would mostly finance the third movie, including selling international distribution rights, while Screen Media Films would handle the domestic distribution, though it wasn't exactly the wide theatrical release Salva had originally hoped for. Instead of a wide theatrical release, the film was given a one-night exclusive showing through Fathom Events, mostly due to the much lower budget of the third film, which was around $6.2 million, and a few other reasons. After 14 years in development hell, the movie had also changed quite a bit. What was Cathedral would be completely changed into the Creeper stalking and killing during the same 23 days from the previous two films. Yes, instead of doing something different, they went with more of the same and stuck this one between parts 1 and 2, making it not a sequel, no, this was an interquel, or a midquel. So after 14 years of development, multiple abandoned scripts, and all the talk about finally killing the Creeper, audiences were given a story set between the two movies they had already seen. But hey, I'm sure it was worth the wait. An Infinity Films production? I didn't know Jeepers Creepers was part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Okay, so it starts off with the Creeper throwing a shuriken at some guy, but the Creeper moves so quickly anyways, so I'm not sure why it even bothers. It takes the guy who apparently was Jason Voorhees, I mean, who else carries a machete like that? I guess it didn't like his hand for whatever reason. We then jump ahead 23 years to the events of the first film. The problem with setting a movie made 14 years later, directly after the events of the first movie, are, well, people age. Like Brandon Smith, who played Sergeant Davis Tubbs at the end of the first movie, who looks noticeably older in this one, even though it's supposed to be literally moments after Derry is taken. At least we do find out what happened to the truck. Creeper's got this thing decked out. He's got a police scanner, some bodies, whatever the hell this skull belongs to. Seriously, it's like a walrus monster? Wait, it's not Justin Long again, is it?
I don't want to know for what.
Oh, and it's also booby-trapped. The Creeper is basically the Kevin McAllister of monsters. We're then introduced to Sheriff Danny Tashtego, who seems to be part of a monster hunting group. I mean, look, they even have cute patches to go with their uniforms. I guess it shouldn't really be surprising that people know there's a monster that stalks the area every 23 years. However, it would have been nice if the police didn't act like Derry was crazy in the first film. This is why interquels done years later are really dumb. The truck gets sent to impound, but Danny knows better. Creeper isn't about to let his prized possession go off that easily. Now, if only he cared about it this much in the second movie, which I guess is like, what, 2 days away? So it's also a self-driving terror truck? This was actually the first design for the Cybertruck, though it was deemed not ugly enough for production. The Creeper attacks, but why the hell does this lady just sit there and watch? Sure, shooting might not accomplish anything, but you could at least try. We also learn that Danny may have some personal history with the monster, but at this point it feels like everyone in Poho County has some history with it. Oh, poor Meg Foster. What did she do to deserve to be in this movie? You know, if the Creeper really needed some eyes, why not take hers? I can't think of anyone else with more striking eyes. Anyway, she's having a lovely conversation with her dead son Kenny, who was also one of the guys killed in the beginning of the movie. Well, at least she doesn't look crazy talking to her dead son. Apparently her son buried something that will reveal all the Creeper's secrets, and definitely not give the viewers blue balls by the end of the movie. The next morning, we meet Addison, the granddaughter of Foster's Galen Brandon. Galen basically tells her she needs to go away for a few days since she's expecting someone. Kind of a weird way to tell your granddaughter you want to get laid, but whatever. I still can't get over the little patch our monster hunters have on their gear. Like, someone actually sat there and designed this. Anyways, the monster hunters have the ultimate weapon to take this thing down. A big fucking gun. Seriously, if running it over with a car or a teen with a javelin can nearly kill the Creeper, then this gun should turn it into Swiss cheese.
Is this thing tested?
The stink throws up a wall of fire.
Okay, well that didn't exactly answer his question, but relax. Addison visits with her friend Gracie and watches as her family argues over a rabbit. You know, I find these people so annoying that I can only hope the Creeper kills them all. We're then with a group of teens, including Josh Hartnott here. I guess the Creeper doesn't have to worry about leaving his truck out in the open when it's booby-trapped.
In a scary-ass old truck with that license plate.
Jeepers Creepers.
I love how everyone just suddenly knows about the legend of the Creeper, including the music, despite none of this being common knowledge in the first two movies, which this one is supposed to take place between. The teens open the truck and discover all the bodies he's accumulated. Unfortunately, the first booby trap somehow misses Josh Hartnott, but it's like the damn thing is sentient, because it sure knows how to harpoon fish. Addison then goes to pick up some alfalfa for her horse, though Granny seems to be a bit behind on the bills. They also try to make me care by explaining Addison lives with her grandmother because her stepfather is, well, let's say, abusive. Though this guy's comments about the heart wants what it wants is kind of creepy. It's nice to see Dwight from The Office is back working on the farm, but he decides to pay for Addison's alfalfa mostly because he has a massive crush on her.
You can do better. That's my point.
What the f*** is wrong with Buddy's dad? So her grandmother is poor. What does that have to do with him liking Addison? Also, there's way too much family drama in my Jeepers Creepers movie. Back with the teens who decide to pull the harpoon from their friend's leg, but the truck must have heard them because it decides to start reeling him back in. Finally, the Creeper shows up, obviously very tired of seeing people mess with his truck. Now make sure you run in a line, makes it way easier to kill you both at the same time. Also, does this technically mean the black guy died first? Buddy finally grows a pair and asks Addison out, but instead of giving him an answer, Addison instead decides to talk about more family drama. I mean, if that's what floats your boat, sure. Oh great, what's crazy grandma doing now? You know, Buddy, maybe Dad was right. Oh great, what does he want? I really hope Buddy knows schizophrenia runs in the family. Galen finds whatever it is her son buried, but it's not time for us to find out just yet. Meanwhile, the creeper gets really pissed off when he realizes someone peed on his truck. There's a lot of things you could do to the creeper, but peeing on his truck is a big no-no. If the creeper's that fast, why the hell does he even drive a truck? In the meantime, Danny starts giving a little backstory into Galen's experience with the creeper, but the only thing I can focus on is Sergeant Davis's clearly dyed hair. So the thing her son buried is a hand. I'm guessing the same hand from the beginning, but it's somehow still alive? In the previous movies, anytime the creeper lost a limb, that limb was effectively dead tissue, but now it can move and fly apparently? Oh, and it gives whoever holds it psychic visions, which we don't get to see, of course. Buddy and Allison make a stop to drop off some hay, but are met by the owner who's like, "You should really get the hell out of here." The creeper pops in, but he seems to be more interested in the kids than he is the homeowners. Geez, Buddy, you couldn't even try to save your little girlfriend? Our monster hunting duo visits with Galen, and they're like, "What the hell happened to your hand?" She then explains the very interesting hand backstory. That's right, you show that hand who's boss. Conveniently, the hand shows her what the creeper is, which is really exciting, because that clearly means we, the audience, will also get to know what it is. Buddy crashes his way back to work, nearly hitting his coworker who thinks a young girl should be abused by her stepfather, simply because she's attractive. Can the creeper kill him next, please? Never did I think I would see the creeper driving and using a police scanner. What a weird timeline this is. Not all of the victims appear to be dead, however, though he's got to make a quick stop and make use of one of his shurikens. Davis and Danny start arguing over whether or not they should hold the creeper's hand too. I'm not sure the reasoning for not wanting to. I mean, if you know what it is, that might make it easier to kill it, no? In the meantime, Addison and Josh Hartnott are trying to find a way out of the truck. Oh great, who's gonna star in Hollywood Homicide now? Our monster hunter friends all get together, so Danny and the creeper can enjoy a nice team bonding experience together. But after he learns what it is, why doesn't he tell anyone else? Why the mystery? In the meantime, Dwight is wondering why his son is acting so weird. Oh, I don't know, Dad. Maybe because a monster just took the only girl within a 50-mile radius? Oh well, look who it is. David asks Danny if the creeper can die, and of course it can. It's not like it'll be back the following day to kidnap some farmer's kid. The truck appears to be immune to gunfire, but not only that, it also fires bowling balls. If they ever make a new Twisted Metal game, they better add the creeper's truck. The other monster hunters didn't seem to get the memo that the truck is immune to gunfire. Okay, so at what point does the military contract the creeper to design their armored vehicles? I mean, it can drive on its own apparently, it's booby-trapped, has harpoons, heat-seeking bombs, and is immune to 20mm rounds? Davis and Danny get sent flying in what is a pretty awful CGI effect. Sure would have been nice if Danny gave them any info on what this thing is. I'm glad the creeper's using his battle axe again after it went missing in the second movie. You thought pissing on his truck was bad? That hat was a John Wayne original! Danny manages to get the creeper's attention, though it's moving a lot slower than it was earlier in the movie. Surely that machine gun must have obliterated it, right? I guess we can't do that since he does have to come back for the sequel, which came out 14 years before this one. This is a problem with interquels. You know, they really can't do anything interesting since there's already an established ending. And what, is the creeper Kratos all of a sudden? Oh yeah, that shotgun will definitely work, considering we just saw the creeper survive anti-aircraft gunfire. Sorry ma'am, but I may have gotten your granddaughter taken by the creeper. You know, the creeper took Addison hours ago and is only now doing something about it. hell does he forget about his own traps? Don't worry everybody, he'll be okay. He seems to have also forgotten he got messed up by a massive machine gun not too long ago. Also, what does he eat to fix his wings? Addison gets saved by a random semi-truck that just happened to be driving down the same side road. But maybe the creeper can get his wing from him. We know what you are. Oh my god! The creeper's being stalked by the fisherman from I Know What You Did Last Summer! Hey, at least he got his hand back! And yes, this movie is just as good as Platoon. Buddy somehow finds Addison, and I guess they can all live happily ever after. Would the creeper really stop stalking them because they know who he is? Buddy and Addison are moving fairly quickly, but I think these two kids have a long, bright future ahead of them. Oh hey, that's a nice jacket there, buddy. Oh no. So who's gonna tell her? We then get to see the identity of the mystery narrator who opened the movie, and I'm pretty sure it's Klaus Kinski.
My name is Trisha Jenner. Come and get me, you son of a bitch.
And she was never heard from again. Seriously, that is the last time we ever hear from Gina Phillips's Trish Jenner, whose role was relegated to nothing more than a cameo, because after this movie crashed and burned at the box office, Victor Salva's own creation would be taken out of his hands. Now it's very obvious that this movie was setting things up for a final movie, maybe. Who knows what Salva really had planned, but the creeper's identity was now known, thus giving the characters something to work with. It's just a shame that we the audience never got to know what the hell the creeper was. All they mentioned was he's something ancient. Could they not have given us even a little bit more than that? Honestly, I don't think even Salva had any idea what the creeper was. During the filming of Jeepers Creepers 2, he claimed that it wasn't demonic, but that it might be a man that was cursed. And then while filming Jeepers Creepers 3 13 years later, he claimed that the creeper was a demon of some kind. I just don't think he ever had a plan for what this thing was going to be, or how it was finally going to die. And I'm sure he was hoping he could coast off it for many, many more years to come. Unfortunately for him, the movie was not well received even amongst its most hardcore audience. I mean, the movie just flat out sucks. Look, I think at times the night scenes look pretty good, and Jonathan Breck does a good job as the creeper, but the rest of it, I couldn't care less. The characters are boring and one-dimensional. The mystery is nonsense since we're never told anything, and there's no tension since we know the creeper goes on to attack a bus full of high schoolers the very next day. But as bad as this movie is, it's not even the real reason the franchise died. No, the real reason is because director Victor Salva's past came back to bite him in the ass. See, back in 1987, Salva, how do I put this gently? 12-year-old star Nathan Winters. Not only did Salva groom a 12-year-old child into performing horrific acts, he also videotaped it. Salva would be arrested while on his way to do post-production on the film after Winters' mother began to grow suspicious, ultimately getting her son to open up and admit to what happened. Salva would be convicted of child and would be given a 3-year prison sentence, but would only end up serving 15 months before being released on parole. Now you might be wondering how the hell someone like this would still be working in the industry, especially with Disney. Well, it was good buddy Francis Ford Coppola who defended him, basically citing the art versus artist claim. Yes, Coppola thought Salva was such a talented filmmaker that it didn't matter what horrific acts he committed, so long as he could direct movies for Disney. In a 2006 interview, Coppola would even say, "You have to remember, while this was a tragedy, that the difference in age between Victor and the boy was very small. Victor was practically a child himself. By the way, Victor was 29 at the time, and Nathan was 12. Salva would go on to direct Powder for Disney, though Disney claimed they knew nothing about Salva's past, and distanced themselves once they found out. However, Salva claims he was upfront about everything from the very beginning, and Disney knew the whole time. As much as I hate to say it, I actually believe Salva in this instance. Salva's involvement with Disney would lead to protests, including Nathan Winters, but the news never really caught on with the general public. Even when Jeepers Creepers 1 and 2 were filming and looking for money, there were protests and news articles, but it seemed to be self-contained to the area where the movies were being filmed. However, skip ahead to the 2010s, and social media is a different beast. Information spreads like wildfire, and when it came time to begin work on Jeepers Creepers 3, they could no longer keep a lid on the situation. This was a big reason why it took so long for the third movie to even come out. Anytime there was a casting call or money was on the line, it would blow up on social media and there would be protests or calls to shut the whole thing down. At this point, there was no putting the toothpaste back in that tube. The film's premiere, which was set for September 13th at the TCL Chinese Theater, even had to be cancelled when threats of protests threatened to harm the theater's reputation. The event had promised stars from the previous films, a screening of the movie, and more. And while it was sold out, they had no choice but to cancel it. When Jeepers Creepers 3 finally came out on September 26th, 2017, it was just 9 days before New York Times would publish its expose on Harvey Weinstein. And 10 days after that would be the explosion of the Me Too movement. So at that point, there really was no more hiding for Victor Salva. But despite the monster that is Victor Salva, despite Jeepers Creepers 3 failing at the box office and with fans, the franchise would somehow limp on. I don't know how or why, but someone thought it would be a good idea to continue Jeepers Creepers with Jeepers Creepers Reborn, a movie that isn't a continuation of the series, but instead an extremely low-budget reboot. The reason for rebooting this series was because producers had been planning to do a fourth and fifth part even before part 3 came out. However, after the negative reception of part 3 from fans, critics, and the controversy surrounding Salva, producers felt it was time to distance themselves from Salva and start fresh. Now you might be asking yourself, but JB, you conniving, cantankerous cryptid of coleslaw, how could they do a fourth Jeepers Creepers without Victor Salva? To that I answer you, I don't really know. Look, I'ma be real with you, but there's a lot of legal mumbo jumbo that I don't understand, and honestly, I don't really care. All I know is Victor Salva was out, and the continuity he created was effectively thrown out with him. This meant the Trish storyline teased at the end of part 3 would never be continued, and even Jonathan Breck would be replaced as the Creeper. Honestly, out of everyone in this situation, it's those two I feel the worst for. Instead, we get new characters, a new timeline of sorts, and a new Creeper. The movie would be written by Jake Seal and Sean Michael Argo, who honestly haven't done anything worth mentioning, and was directed by Timo Voronsola, director of the insane Iron Sky movies, which, if you've never seen those, are about Nazis that live on the moon or something. I only saw the first one back in the day, but it was just as stupid as it sounds. Though I'm pretty sure the second one has Hitler riding a T-Rex, so there's that at least.
Sieg Heil! Mutterfickers!
But I don't know about you, should we just get this over with because it's gonna be really fucking painful. Reborn begins with poor Dee Wallace. Now what did she do to be dragged into this? She's supposed to be 80s mom, not stuck in terrible Jeepers Creepers mom. I actually met Dee Wallace a few years back and she is very sweet. Now this all feels very familiar. An old couple driving on a lonely country road, playing the license plate game with a deranged truck driver. It's almost as if this series has no other ideas. The old couple keep driving until they spot the truck driver and what appears to be him dumping bodies down a pipe. The event plays out exactly how you'd expect. The truck driver comes back, drives them off the road, and then they make the decision to go back and check out where he dumped the body. Except there's a twist. It actually turns out to be a YouTube video one of our lead characters is watching on his phone. Yeah, Jeepers Creepers Reborn decides to get very meta with things, making reference to the unsolved mystery segment Salva likely used for inspiration. They even got the fact the real-life killer swapped license plates after killing his wife. On top of this, the Creeper is treated like a cryptid. They even have footage of him walking around the woods like he's Bigfoot.
Didn't they make a movie out of it? Creepy Creeper or something?
3, actually. But none of that is real.
This is where things get confusing, because Jeepers Creepers in this world are actually movies based on the Creeper lore. But this movie will be the definitive Creeper. Everything we've seen before this is just what Hollywood wanted you to see.
And he says, yeah, that the first 3 films are movies.
It was taking the Creeper and reimagining it into our version so that A, that's something we wanted to do. B, now it's our version of the Creeper. There is a very definite difference between Timo's creeper and Victor's creeper.
So I haven't even talked about our characters here, but we've got Chase, the Fox Mulder of the movie, who just wants to believe, and his girlfriend Elaine, played by Sidney Craven, the Dana Scully, because she's a scientist and a skeptic. Also, Sidney Craven, as in Sidney Prescott and Wes Craven from Scream, F*** off movie. The couple are headed to a horror hound convention, which Lane absolutely loathes because she is way too cool for that.
Baby, I told you that burrito would come out tomorrow.
I don't think I could date a woman that couldn't handle her burritos. Also, is that the same shuriken that was made from dairy? Because if it is, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's almost like they're just loading the movie with fan service, hoping people won't notice just how terrible it is. Look, I know season 5 of Stranger Things was bad, but the Demogorgon is looking pretty rough. So this is what I find interesting. This again is supposed to be the real creeper, and yet is he not coming out of Jack Taggart's barn? I mean, there's his harpoon gun right there. Lane gets a phone call from her clearly gay best friend. I wish I could say I care about their conversation, but I'm just waiting for the creeper to kill someone. Oh no, not that guy. Also, why does every single Jeepers Creepers movie have people peeing? I mean, this one's not even directed by the pervert. Chase and Lane decide to check out a fun shop full of oddities. But oh my god, is that Annabelle? Chase discovers the papier-mâché house from Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors, but he cuts his finger on it because he's a dumbass. They meet the owner of the shop who gives them directions and also happens to be a psychic or something. Wait, is this the real Giselle? Also, she's clearly conspiring with someone. Meanwhile, at Moonscar Island, Chase and Lane find their hotel room, which is oddly empty for a place right by a horror convention. Chase suggests maybe she could cosplay, but she's just like,
"That's okay, Mr. J. Local horror legend."
For someone who hates nerd stuff, she sure seems to know the characters. Now relax, you two. That's kind of why she's been sick lately. Though I guess at that point, you're really not hurting anyone. Finally, the Creeper's truck. A little more dollar store than I remember. I've been to a decent amount of horror conventions over the years. Some of the biggest in the country, in fact. And they're never this exciting. Although there was that one time I chased Wolf Cop drunk through a party. When the movie was in production, this was actually supposed to be a real horror hound convention, but this came right at the heart of COVID, so that idea was a no-go. Horror Hound did allow the production team to use their name and merch for the movie, though I wonder if they regretted that decision once they saw the actual movie. Oh no, not evil religious people. I love how they have the devil horns crossed out, as if that's the worst thing about a horror convention. Honestly, it's usually the smell. Meanwhile, in the Blair Witch Project, this random sap is killed by the Creeper, who decides to use his shurikens despite being right in the guy's face. Ooh, a shuriken throwing game. I feel like I know a guy who would be really good at this. Also, isn't using real shurikens kind of a liability? I mean, you've got tons of drunks throwing sharp metal objects.
Damn it.
See what I was saying? The carny tells her something about a creeper draw, whatever the hell that is, but I think her drink may have been laced with something. Michael Myers, movie, you really need to stop referencing better movies. So nobody notices this lady clearly rigging the creeper draw? I mean, she's right there. It's time for the creeper draw, and could they not have picked someone who could at least speak properly? Like I'm one to talk.
We have lured and devoured sad souls like y'all.
It turns out the creeper draw is for a creeper-themed escape room. But wait a minute, is that not the house Chase cut his finger on? In the least shocking twist ever put to film, our two leads win the draw. I will say this is a more interesting setting than a stranded bus. Well, in theory, it's a more interesting setting. The creeper gets so sick of the convention noise that he cuts off their Wi-Fi. Though, like Sony, he clearly knows nothing about physical media. Oh god, I hope they don't run into Extro. Things get really bad when you start to notice just how much green screen they use in this movie. I mean, it's so obvious they're on a soundstage and not outside.
Lee?
Oh great, first Buddy, now Chase. Can any of these guys protect their women? I guess the upside is now he knows the creeper's real. And who keeps leaving these bodies everywhere? Maybe Lane's at the Sawyer house? It's weird because even the inside of the house feels like a green screen somehow. The group gets locked inside the house because the obviously sketchy people from the town were obviously sketchy.
Where is she? Hey!
Trained at the Christopher Nolan School of Batman detective work, I see.
Hired? Hired by who?
Giselle. Manila.
Wait a minute, so she is Giselle from the first movie and Godzilla's son? I would love to know what the creeper is doing to Lane's unborn baby. The group runs into another room and this very stupid lady thinks the roof is leaking. Since when does the roof leak blood?
Mommy, it's raining. It's raining red.
Also, this house they're in makes this whole thing feel like an episode of Scooby-Doo. Even the creeper isn't too good for a superhero landing. Also, he looks awful. The hillbilly shoots it, requiring the creeper to remove his spirit Halloween arm. Luckily, he's got bodies on standby so he can heal himself when necessary. You know, this movie makes me want to watch Jennifer's Body instead, and I don't even like that movie. Lane frees herself because the stupid creeper left a knife laying around. You know, for a lady that's been stabbed in the gut, she's pretty tenacious. Seriously, is this not a Scooby-Doo episode? It just needs the campy pop music. What? That's not the Jeepers Creepers song. It's almost like they were too cheap to buy the rights to the actual song. Lane magically finds the rest of the group, whose names I never really cared to learn. One guy steps into a bear trap, which is kind of boring when compared to some of the other creepers' traps.
The creeper, something is trying to kill us.
Have you been taking drugs?
No, but this movie is so bad that I might start. Hello? The group finds themselves in another room, but here's where things get weird. We've already established the previous 3 movies are movies in this universe, yet we find a room of trophies the creeper has collected from the previous movies. A high school jacket, a doll made up to look like Derry, a doll made up to look like the crazy cat lady, and I'm pretty sure this is Sheriff Danny's head rotting away right here. Maybe the creeper is just a big fan of the movies, and these are like popcorn buckets to him? Why does this feel like if Jeepers Creepers was directed by Rob Zombie? Hey, I remember the poster for the first movie. Actually, the poster for this movie might be the only half-decent thing about it.
Jeepers, baby!
This feels like the Jeepers Creepers movie you'd see on a TV in the background of a real movie.
Look at all this crap. What is this? Shrine?
Well, I can see why the creeper didn't eat his brain. The group realizes this thing is being fed by the townsfolk. For what reason? Who the hell knows? But they decide the only way they're getting out of here is if they beat this thing's ass. Damn, the creeper throws a nice right. Better put on my legally distinct Jeepers Creepers music while I murder these people. There are so many cuts and movements during this scene that it just hurts to watch. You know, as cheap as this movie is, at least they gave the creeper a torso. In part 3, they kept a shirt on him the whole time, like he's a fat kid at the swimming pool. I was the fat kid at the swimming pool. Lane somehow thinks she's going to fight the creeper. Remember when this thing could take on an entire police force? Although I guess that was technically a movie. Nothing about this scene looks real. I'm even starting to question if the actors are CGI. So apparently the creeper wants the baby because it will help it live forever, but how does this help the creepy townsfolk? I get they're a cult, but if this thing can never die, would it not just kill them next?
How do you like those peepers, bitch?
Not quite on the same level as Sigourney Weaver. You know, Michael Myers handled losing his eyesight a lot better. Are we sure this whole movie isn't one big April Fool's prank? This movie's so bad, even the Resident Evil crows have seen enough. So did the crows eat the creeper, or what the hell is going on? Also, none of these people look like they're on the same set. Oh, thank God, Michael Chiklis is here. I don't even know what to say about this movie. It's bad. I mean really bad. The acting is atrocious. The actors spend more time trying to do a convincing American accent than they do trying to convey any kind of emotion. The effects are easily the worst in the series. I understand they had issues with COVID and the lawsuit over the rights issues didn't exactly help, but why all the green screen? Would it really have been that hard to shoot outdoors? Look, Jeepers Creepers 3 was ass too, but at least they shot at real locations. The retconning was also weird, though I do kind of get why they wanted to do it, but if you really wanted to say this is the real Creeper and the movies are just movies, why all the references and callbacks to the first 3? Apparently they had even tried to get Justin Long and Ray Wise involved in some capacity, but for what? A 3-second cameo against a terrible green screen? The worst aspect for me is the Creeper itself. It just looks stupid. Like it looks like something you'd get out of a Goodwill's Halloween donations. This movie was also supposed to be the start of a new trilogy that was going to dive into the cult and the Creeper's backstory, but that clearly isn't happening anytime soon. This is such a weird franchise because it started off pretty damn good, but from then on it felt like the franchise was cursed.
You are cursed!
Each movie just got progressively worse and worse. I was actually shocked to see just how bad the final movie was. I didn't even know a 4th was coming out until one day I randomly came across the poster somewhere and I was like, there's no fucking way this is real. What's really funny is you can find these fake posts that claim Jenna Ortega is confirmed to be starring in Jeepers Creepers 5, and the scariest part is people actually believe it. Although watch, 5 years from now this actually happens, and everything I just said right here ages like a fine milk. The Creeper should have been the next great horror icon. The first movie had everything it needed: a memorable monster, a simple mythology, an effective gimmick, and a song that you just can't get out of your damn head. But the movies just kept getting worse and worse, and the director turned out to be a massive piece of shit. It started as a genuinely creepy cult classic and somehow ended with actors pretending to stand outside. Every 23rd spring for 23 days, the Creeper gets to eat. After Reborn, maybe it's time we finally stopped feeding him. But what do you think about Jeepers Creepers? Let me know down below. Anyways, that's all for today. I hope you're doing well and stay spooky. Huge thanks to all my channel members. You're the real MVPs of the Spooky Squad. Your support helps keep the lights flickering and the monsters fed. If you'd like to join up and help support the channel, check out the join button below. But no pressure, just watching and liking helps a ton too.